First quarter audit committee meeting. We're going to do call to order and roll call.
Chairperson Ferguson.
Here.
Member Schutte.
Here.
Member Mayhorn. Member Molina. Member Wells.
Here.
Member Duke. A quorum is present.
Okay, thank you. Public comments and discussion. The public is invited at this time to comment on, discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Carson City Audit Committee. In order for members of the public to participate in the committee's consideration of agenda item, the committee strongly encourages members of the public to comment on an agenda item during the item itself. No action may be taken on a matter raised under public comment unless the item has been specifically included on the agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. Do we have anyone on the phone today?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next item is approval of the December 7th. I can't believe it's been coming up on 4 months here. December 7th Audit Committee meeting.
I have a couple of corrections, and then I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
On item 4, on the first page, the second was Member Wells, not Member Mayhorn. And on page 2 of the minutes, under item 6B, Member Wells made the motion to close revenue, accounts receivable, and payroll, item 2.
Okay.
And with that, with those 2 changes, I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, all in favor? Or I need a second, I guess. Second. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next item is adoption of today's agenda. Any questions or comments or changes to the agenda as it stands right now?
No changes.
Committee, any comments or questions? No? Okay. Agenda's adopted. Next item, moving right along, is 6A. For possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding monitoring, review, and closure of the internal audit findings and recommendations included in the audit findings tracking report, and providing a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to close completed findings and/or recommendations. Sherry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Ferguson. Sorry, I forgot to turn on my microphone. This for our new member, I want to welcome Ms. Schutte to the board. Thank you. So anything I plan to discuss today on this report in Peach is what I plan to discuss. The other items is just to let you know where we are in that process. So we're talking about IT volatility. That one I have an update for you. And then fleet and payroll.
Okay.
So we're not talking about the social media policy. That one, expected completion date is 6/30/22, so that's why we're not discussing that yet. It's not done. For the IT vulnerability audit, all of these actually have dates of 3/31, and I've been informed by IT that they have corrected everything that they can correct. So our audit firm has been asked to validate these as, per direction of this board. So that is still planned for April for the Eid Bailey to go in and make sure and retest and check those corrections. So hopefully I'll be bringing this whole thing for closure at our next meeting.
Okay.
For the fleet management audit, Eid Bailey was able to validate this. This is the inventory clerk. We wanted to give it 6 months to see how it was working, how that position was working. And according to the department head as well as Eid Bailey, it is working as instructed, and I'm recommending closure of this item.
Any questions, comments?
Do you want to go through all of them and then, okay.
Yeah.
On the payroll audit, I'm recommending closure of both of these items. Melanie, the HR director, and I signed off on a memo that included all of the payroll managers' changes for payroll. So there is a process now to document and track any changes that we make to payroll. So that is now in place. And then IT did correct the issue with our Munis system where HR and payroll had some overlapping responsibilities in the system. So they took away some from each, so there's no more overlap. We had to kind of test that a little bit, so it wasn't done immediately, but we did get it done. So if you want us, Eid Bailey, to validate that we did make those changes, we can do that, or you can believe me, and we can move forward and close them. It's really up to the audit committee.
I'm good with just closing them. You guys? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's really all I'm recommending closure on, the complete fleet management audit and the payroll audit for now.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
Yeah, I will move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors closing fleet audit finding number
1.
1 and the payroll audit findings number 1 and 3.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That was the quickest ever. All right, moving on to item 6B, discussion regarding the fiscal 2022 audit program update and hotline activity. Sherry and Ida Bailey.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over immediately to Aubrey Donovan, who I see is on the phone to discuss this item.
Good afternoon, Audrey.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Ferguson. And it looks like we have members Wells and member Schutte.
Correct.
Nice to meet you. And thank you, Sherry, for turning that over to me. Yeah, I wanted to quickly give you an update. I don't know if you can see me off camera. If you need me on camera, I'm happy to turn that on. I'm having some technical difficulties with Comcast on my end. They mentioned being down for 2 days, and so I'm on my cell phone hotspot, and I'm hoping I'm okay at this point.
Can't believe you're having
But
internet
yeah.
issues. That's crazy.
It's like going around.
Especially with Comcast. No, go ahead. Thanks.
Yay, Comcast. Thank you. All right, so I wanted to bring up the plan that was approved at the end of fiscal year 21 for 21-22. And the first engagement that we completed was a citywide payroll process. As you know, that was delivered at the last audit committee, which was December 7th. And like you, Chairman Ferguson, it feels like a while ago. Can't believe that December 7th was the last time we met. The next engagement that was on the list to be completed is the topic of insourcing versus outsourcing of the building division activities. I want to let you know that we are about 60% complete. We are working on our benchmarking activities. We have identified a little over a dozen local and across different states, municipalities that have similar criteria for our benchmark that we were looking for as it relates to Carson City. So that was really the first one to see that benchmarking cities with a population similar to Carson City, so around 30,000. And the other one was the fact that these cities that we're benchmarking are not a contract city. And that really just means that the city is not provided services by the county, that they are a standalone entity, and those entities that are either currently outsourcing their building department in those activities like inspections and permitting, or they are looking to outsource building and inspections, or they currently were outsourcing and they recently brought it back in-house. So there's a number of criteria there to look at, and been doing some benchmarking, about 14 different questions, looking to identify any, like what type of activities that are being outsourced, what organization is outsourced, that is outsourced to. So anyway, we're about 60% complete with that objective. To wrap up, we're looking to deliver that no later than obviously June of this year. The next two engagements I'm going to include together, and those are really related to the follow-up activity that Sherry just mentioned, and it's the IT vulnerability follow-up along with the end user and wireless vulnerability assessment. And as Sherry mentioned, those are ready for follow-up, and our IT team will be conducting that in April, the first part of April. And we can bring you those conclusions at our next meeting. Another topic that was approved and finalized was ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, and the city had set aside funds for subject matter expertise to discuss and respond to questions related to ARPA, basically on an as-needed basis. And this is billed on a time and materials based on FY 21-22, utilizing those services on a few occasions. And we've expensed roughly less than $1,000. I won't give you exact, but it's less than that. The fifth item of 7.
Hey, Audrey, would you please extend my thanks to Eric Bergman? He was really great in answering some of our questions related to ARPA.
I sure will. That's
Thank
great
you.
feedback. I'll let him know.
Yeah, thank you.
The fifth of 7 items that I'll be updating you on is follow-up. And as we had just heard from Sherry, we are doing fantastic when it comes to following up on the efforts to confirm that the risks identified from prior internal audit engagements have been remediated. And currently we're about 98% implementation success rate. And I say that because I want to compare industry average, which is about 75% implementation rate, and just applaud Carson City, the divisions, Sherry for staying on top of that and her collaboration with them. In fact, when she was on vacation, she was reaching out to the IT director for us to be able to follow up in April for those engagements. So really just want to applaud the city with the 98% implementation rate, and it's pretty amazing. Additionally, I feel like Eide Bailey is a big contributor to that as well, because when we issue our recommendations, we're really making them actionable. They're very well defined, and we collaborate with the departments to make sure that those can be implemented along with the set target date, so we know when we can get back in there and do the follow-up remediation work. So with follow-up, we have expended about 25% of the allotted budget, or roughly 5 of the 20 hours. We'll be looking to update you again on that in the next meeting. The sixth topic is the fraud, waste, and abuse.
Before you move
hotline.
on, I had no idea it was
Sure.
an option not to do these. So I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Audrey.
It's not an option.
No, great job. I applaud everyone involved because this is as skinny as the follow-up tracker's ever been. So great job. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. I was out researching what the industry averages for follow-up and was expecting it to be in the 80s and shocked to see that it was 75%, and was quickly running the numbers and going, I bet you were close to 99%. And yeah, you guys are at 98%. It's really impressive. All right, so the next topic was the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. The last time I spoke with you all, there had been a number of activities reported related to the library. Those were all handled internally with the city manager, turned over to Nancy Polson. I don't know where those are at this point. I'm assuming those are still being addressed and handled. The last I followed up with Lighthouse website, there was no other activity reported related to Carson City, and we've expended 75% of those efforts, basically an hour a quarter. We look at those, we identify what items have come in, and we coordinate with Sherry and whoever else within the city that needs to know what those activities are.
And Audrey, just so you're aware, the library has its own board. And so I know the city manager and the HR director have been working with that board to resolve those issues.
And just, I know I've asked this question before. I just want to make sure we're still advertising we're still advertising the hotline, and like it's on the website or like
Yes,
internally for
it's on the
employees?
website for employees. They have to read the fraud, waste, and abuse policy every year. And then new hires also during orientation are told about the hotline.
Okay, great.
All right, so the seventh item, that brings us to the last item, which is the risk assessment and the audit plan. We've been directed to perform the FY 22-23 risk assessment and audit plan, which we plan to discuss with you today. And we are 95% complete. The remainder is really to make any modifications, tweaks, additions to finalize the delivery for the next audit committee.
So for the committee, Audrey moved on to the next item.
Okay, just to quickly wrap up this one, I wanted to give you a quick recap of the budget to date. To date, we've expended roughly 65%. Is that okay to share, Sherry?
Yeah, absolutely. Any budget
Okay.
that's unused, we
Long
roll forward to next year. So we've got a larger budget next year.
Yeah, so we've expended 35%. We anticipate expending all of the budget, especially with the wrap-up activities, the IT follow-up activities need to be performed, wrapping up the building division engagement, and finalizing the risk assessment and annual audit plan. Yeah, so with anything continuing, I don't anticipate, though, if there is anything rolling over, it won't be significant. And that wraps up my update for the audit plan for FY 21-22.
Okay, any questions or comments from the committee? I think that's it for the action items, right?
Yes, everything else is discussion at this meeting.
Yeah. So is there anything else on the risk assessment?
So yeah, the last item on the agenda, and I apologize, Audrey was wrapping up the fiscal year 22 risk assess, which was part of the audit plan for 22. I got confused because our next item is the annual risk assessment and internal audit for fiscal year 23 and what we're going to plan on doing next year. And so that's kind of something that the committee and the internal auditor put together. So this is what we typically do is do this in one meeting. We typically do the risk assessment and decide what we're going to audit and figure out the budget in one meeting. But I decided because we have a new board member and it might just be easier to discuss at this meeting and then come back with the actual plan at the next meeting for implementation.
Yeah, and plus we're missing 2 members. So,
Right.
You know,
Yeah, so.
it'd be good to spread over.
So my hope was that Audrey could go through the risk assessment and what she thinks, we could look at for next year, and then you guys can give out your ideas, and we can kind of develop a plan for fiscal year 23. We'll bring it back at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Excellent. So the risk assessment, we kicked that off after our last audit committee meeting, and we go through a routine
Methodology?
methodology that, thank you, somehow it got stuck on my tongue. But we look at a number of factors such as past internal audits performed, the information and knowledge that we've gained throughout our time in service with the city. We look at information provided by the city through interviews, surveys, emails, phone calls. We assess your current and historical financial performance. We talk to your external auditor and your current external auditor. We discuss with yourselves, which is why we have our discussion topic on audit committee right now with the risk assessment. And then we also added another component we duplicated from last year, which was the city's overall strategic plan. So mission, vision, goals, making sure the city is aligning those activities to ensure that those objectives are met and what might be the risks of preventing the city from meeting those objectives. And then lastly was a lot of benchmarking and research and talking with Eide Bailly personnel about the landscape of government in general and the types of risks that Carson City may be vulnerable to. So with that said, we gathered all that information and we look at various risk types. In fact, there are 10 different types that we look at, whether they're legal, regulatory, liquidity risks, revenue risks, budget expenditure risks. And we start to look at if those risks are low, medium, or high. And that's how we arrived at the plan that we have on the 6th page of this document, and it starts with an annual risk assessment as line 1, and that is just estimated hours and fees on there, as a placeholder to get the conversation started if we want to go more robust or if we want to stay as we have been with an overview of the activities that are performed. And then the second line item, I think I'll take a pause and then we can actually discuss the utility billing, and that would include water, sewer, and stormwater. And this is an area that has not been reviewed or looked at since I've been the main point of contact on this for Carson City since 2019. And additionally, there is a new utility billing program. So it makes it ripe for an internal audit. We have in the estimated hours here a light review and a full review, and this would really be a combination of those, obviously the first piece of the utility billing and then a combination of the testing and the review that's included below. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to review this, but I'm happy to go into more detail about the types of activities we would perform for the internal audit, whether that's a light or a full review.
You guys need any clarity on these?
can she just finish and then let's have a little bit of a discussion about the whole,
Sure.
the big picture?
Sure.
Sure, Member Wells, happy to do that. Okay, so then the next area is the sheriff mobile and body worn video recording equipment. To date, this has not had an internal audit review of that program since its inception. And that's my understanding. It was instituted in about 2017. And this is really to ensure that the mobile and body worn cameras are in alignment with the Nevada revised statutes, internal policies and internal controls, that those are adequately designed, administered, and monitored. We have this broken out as a light review and also a full-blown review, which would include a number of risks that are notorious for these types of programs, looking to ensure that the software the equipment in the software is aligned with the sheriff's program as it relates to those Nevada revised statutes, that the current system users and access are monitored, so individuals have the proper access for the equipment, evaluating the effectiveness of the internal controls surrounding the management of data requests, which you guys do have a centralized data repository. Source of requests come through to one individual. You don't have multiple individuals. So responding to those requests, ensuring that there's proper training and written materials for the individuals that are provided the mobile video and body worn camera devices. And then the internal controls around the whole use of that equipment. So ensure that the body camera footage is properly collected, that it's maintained, that it's monitored, that there's an appropriate audit trail that captures all that information that's accessed. We would look at the video retention and the storage, potentially including the juvenile detention and potentially the alternative sentencing as well, because the video retention and storage may be all encompassing into one location. And then the last section would be sample testing, because this would be a really large population, but sample testing to ensure that the body camera has been started up correctly so that the officer is not in the field and realize that it has not been activated, that it's properly in use, that it's deactivated, that the information that was recorded is then categorized with the proper case numbers, including those that the footage that's not for evidence, and making sure that the body camera footage is uploaded effectively. And I don't know what the policy is for uploading the camera footage, but typically it's within a certain time frame when a shift is ended, or by the time that the officer is on site for the next shift, which could be anywhere from 10 to 24 hours later. So yeah, looking at all those components, it's a lot. So breaking it out into either a light review or a full review. Moving on, we have a line item for special projects as they have come up in the past, and these special audits or projects are requests for consulting engagement similar to the ARPA American Recovery project or questions that we have been tasked with. And that is more of a TBD, hours and fees. We can either earmark that as we already know of a special project, or we can leave that open. We've left the follow-up and the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline on there as well with the same hours as last year. And that wraps up the areas for the audit plan.
Okay, thanks, Audrey. Questions, comments, concerns?
I have a quick question. So, thank you. Can you explain a little bit, and you did in here in terms of the light review versus the full review. There isn't, a money to do full review on everything. I see that. And so it's kind of picking and choosing. On the light review, are there kind of full review samples? I don't know if I'm asking that right, or are there areas that you are able to delve in a little bit deeper as kind of a sample, or how do I ask this? Just to make
I
sure
understand
that.
your question.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, yes, it's really this is a discussion with the audit committee to understand where you guys would like to see the engagement
Okay.
work completed. So if you'd like to see something high level to ensure the internal controls are in place, that the activities are rolling forward to the ERP, the Tyler Muni system correctly, the billing utility system is working with the city system accurately. And if you'd like us to get into additional testing, this is where we could have that discussion as to what level of effort that we see based on past reviews in this area, which we know there have not been any, at least in my tenure. It's a new system and a new program. The process is roughly the same. There may be some minor changes that we would want to ensure that current processes are in alignment with the documented policies and procedures. But the testing, we can determine down below, we've got 6 areas where we were suggesting ensure that the new accounts are opened properly. We can sample test to a certain amount. We can look at say 5 or 25, or we may, if you think it's a higher risk, we can look at it from a sample base factor where we're looking at the full population and getting full statistical sampling coverage. Knowing that new accounts can be opened multiple times a day, we'd be looking at least 25. Ensuring that ongoing servicing of accounts comply with established policies and procedures. That we could probably complete that in looking at maybe a handful of servicing accounts and pulling up activities based on that. I don't know how effective that coverage will be without getting in there and looking at what the process is currently, how often existing accounts are opened up, and the ongoing servicing of those accounts, how frequent that is performed and what type of activities performed, to know truthfully how many we would sample in that area. And then just quickly going through the rest, basic system and operational control processes is making sure that the activities flow through the systems properly. That would be a test of 1, unless we have activities that are performed differently within the system, which again, we'd need to get in the department and understand the types of activities that go through the system, setting up new billings and testing 1 of each of those activities.
Thank you.
We would work within
Sorry.
the
This will-
budget that was established. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, this is not the only time we set the procedures. This is an overall what they're planning on doing for fiscal year '23. But when they, before they start the procedures, we will bring a list of agreed upon procedures for each of these audits so that you can review it and make sure they're not going down the rabbit hole somewhere where you're not interested in. You want them to review something else. So that kind of helps align what you're looking for with what they're doing.
Yeah, and plus typically when you, when you get into audits, the start of your audit, you assess the internal controls. And if the internal controls are not there, you have to expand the scope of the work in order to ensure that there's not bigger issues. So we give them some leeway on this based on their internal control assessment at the beginning of the audit.
Thank
Sure,
you.
go
I
ahead.
forgot about those pieces and parts. The audit program is important and is approved by the audit committee. So Member Schutte, you're aligned with the individuals there that have gone through this multiple times and in fact are very helpful in guiding you through this process. But yes, there is an audit program that you would need to approve as we move forward, and the structure of that can change depending on risk.
Member Wells has some comments.
So I actually have a couple questions. Does the city have a performance indicator reporting mechanism in place throughout the various departments?
We have performance metrics, but they're based on the strategic plan. So no, each department does not have a bunch of performance metrics.
Okay.
We tried that a long time ago and it was more trouble than it was worth.
It's a lot of work. If you do it right, it's a lot of work, but it also tells you a lot.
Well, we didn't find that. to be
Well,
true.
it can
So
tell you. It can tell you a
I think
lot.
if it's set up correctly, it could tell you a
It can
lot.
it can tell you a lot
I don't
because
think it was
I've
set
had
up
some that are work
correctly.
really well, and I've had some that do not work really well.
Yeah.
And the ones that work really well tell you whether or not you are making progress or providing services within the scope of what your division or your department is supposed to provide. So I did go through and read the strategic plan, and there are a couple of things in the strategic plan that jumped out at me as things that are coming up that I was a little bit surprised that were not kind of discussion items about possible projects for this. Because we had talked about the business licenses at one point, and I know that the business license system is in there for 2024. I believe it was 2024. And so are we still working on the business licenses as part of the outsourcing of the building division, or is that not part of that? Because I know we had talked about it, but I don't remember whether or not that's part of that audit or not.
Audrey?
Yes, it is, Member Wells, it is included in the engagement, the insourcing and outsourcing of the building division activities. I have the audit program, or I did have it up here a minute ago. I closed out a bunch of applications so it wouldn't crash, but I'm bringing it up again. And goodness, I wanted to give you a full review of what that objective looked like. All right, so really to assess the business licensing, we're obtaining and reviewing the policies and procedures, understanding the workflow, the finances, the reports related to the business licensing system. We've conducted walkthroughs, interviews, we've gathered documentation to date. We've really got our arms around the process of the business licensing fees and whether the reduction in the business licensing, whether it's related to the completeness and accuracy of the billings, the collections, and penalty assessments. In talking with Hope, the building division director, she indicated that there was an issue with the billing quite some months ago, and that has created some issues with the billing, incorrect billing going out to the individuals. And so we've been pulling reports, requesting, and in fact, we'll get the rest of those this week, and reconciling those reports, the revenue with the business licenses to ensure that those are properly recorded and really understand what's going on with the business licensing and what was the intent of it, what was the root cause of that error.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were still on that one because I know that that was one that we discussed, and I wanted to make sure that that was continuing to be done. The utility billing system, is that a new system? I know that we have new bills, but is it a new system?
So under our old enterprise resource system, we had the billing system. So now that we've switched to Munis, there is a separate module we bought for utility billing under that new system. So that's where we want, where I thought it was a good idea to look at that new system as we've looked at all new systems after they've been implemented, simply to make sure the internal controls are still in place, nothing's being posted to the wrong account, that everything carried over as it should have.
Yep, and that's kind of what I was getting at. There's been a track record of looking at the new systems, and if that's new, then that makes a lot of sense. I'm still having trouble with having the sheriff's camera system being the next highest priority. I think there were some other things that I read through the strategic plan that I thought would have popped higher. So I'm not sure where that one really came from. And are there does the state have a system of coming in and doing the reviews for the body camera footage?
So far, we have not been audited for the body camera footage, but it is very important with obviously cases, and there's a lot more legalities with sheriffs that have come up lately. I don't want to get too deep into that. Hopefully you know what I mean there. But in addition to that, since 2017, I believe we have kept all of the body cam footage that we've taken. So that's a massive amount of storage that the city's had to take on. So part of this was kind of determining a best practices of, you know, what should we be keeping and for how long.
Okay.
That was, it's yeah.
So here's kind of where I'm leaning is to kind of doing more of a full review of the utility billing like we would normally have done for the like we did for payroll and I would keep it a high level on the body camera. I think maybe setting up some best practices for the body camera footage. I don't know. I would see if we could scale that one back because to me there were some other things in there that really popped out that I would rather spend resources.
Well, what are those? Because this is that discussion.
So one of them is that, looks like there's going to be an update to the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. Is
Just the policy.
the policy.
So nothing's changing.
Okay.
But the policy hasn't been updated since 2013.
Okay.
So,
The business license improvements were one. Cost benefit analysis for Jump Around Carson, the parking ticket system, splitting out the clerk and recorder, the public administrator duties, cybersecurity response plan, the facility condition assessment reporting, capital projects reporting. Those are probably the big ones that I saw that kind of jumped out at me as I read through the strategic plan of things where the internal audit could play a role in determining whether how those move forward.
okay. Well, I can tell you the parking ticket system is pretty minor. It's a small dollar amount.
Yeah. It's small.
So, but that would probably be a small project if we wanted to look at that. I know we have not implemented a system yet, but definitely down the road, that's something that we could do. I honestly try to give us a full year with that system implemented before the internal auditor goes in and says, you're doing things wrong, because, you know, we want to make sure we've caught what we can catch before we send an internal auditor in.
But do we have a parking system? Do we have a parking
It's
ticket
very
system?
old and antiquated. It's AS400. Yes, we do have a parking ticket system, but we are looking at upgrading that. So I don't know if it's good to send them in now
Yeah.
or wait until we get the new system and then do that.
No, I would wait.
The split out of the clerk recorder, I don't know exactly where that is yet. We're discussing it. We're working with Douglas County. And then the capital project reporting you mentioned, we did do a capital projects review in 2018. So that would be something that would probably come up again for review in the next couple years. We do try to hit things, every 3 to 5 years, depending on the magnitude of it. And since we've got some new buildings coming online in the next 2 or 3 years, it might be good to do that when those buildings are being, done.
Hey Sherry, do we have a updated, and maybe Audrey too, do we have an updated matrix of all the areas last time they were audited and just like a high level?
That's what the findings tracking sheet, the front page,
Okay.
shows you all the different audits that you've done or that we have done over the years. It's got the report submittal and then the approval of the Board of Supervisors date on there.
And that's everything?
That is everything. Well, since 2016. I believe this committee's been in existence since 2012.
Member Wells, what were your thoughts on the business analysis of a Jump Around Carson? What were your thoughts in that area?
So the idea is looking at Jack ridership to determine whether the services and the costs to provide them, where's that at? And it says at least in the strategic plan that's for 2024. to be completed by 2024. So I know that's not one that we've really looked at that I'm aware of. It's relatively new, but been in operation for what, 5 years now?
Jack? No,
Yeah.
Jack's been around for a long time. That's our little bus system in
But
Carson.
it hasn't been around that long.
Well, it's been around ever since I've been here. It's been 11 years at least.
At least, yeah, I was thinking at least 15.
Yeah, so it's an FTA program, so very little of city match goes towards that program. But it is, I mean, the FTA does audit us every 10 years, and we did just go through an audit with them. And I think that strategic plan item is to have a consultant come in and look at that. Look at the funding and let us know if we're adequately funding it or if they need more funding or how that's working. I don't know, Audrey, can you think of a time that would be good before the consultant or after to do a procedure on that for us?
If the consultant is going to come up with the same information that you're looking for, which is to determine the services and the cost are provided, is there enough cost to support the services? What types of services are being provided? Do you want to expand those services? The types of users of Jump Around Carson? It's something we can do, but if it's something you've budgeted for an external consultant to perform, I don't know if it would be a benefit to have us come in and do that as well. But it is something
Okay.
if you see it's a higher risk, we can look at that, or it could be one of those special projects that we can determine later.
Okay. I can ask the city
other
manager what the
one
plan
was-
is on that, if they are planning on hiring a consultant in 2024, or what the plan, what her vision is for that.
The other one, Member Wells, you mentioned public administrator duties. Is that similar to the public guardian?
It's a different job, Audrey, and right now,
Is it?
the clerk, recorder, and public administrator are one elected official. And so the clerk recorder was looking at moving the public administrator fees or public administrator duties away from her. So we're looking at different options for that. I'm just not sure where it's going yet.
So the item in the strategic plan is to review the public administrator activities, duties, and rules, develop strategies to improve technological, administrative, and community services abilities, and may include creating its own dedicated position within the city or contracting out for services. That's the
Right.
item that's in the strategic plan.
Right. So we're looking.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so we are looking at either hiring a person under Aubrey, the clerk recorder, to help her, or we're looking at contracting it out and not doing it under the city at all. We're looking at several options right now, so.
And so this kind of goes down to that, the building permits, the outsourcing of building permits, the insourcing versus outsourcing that we're doing right now. That's kind of what caught my attention, was the insourcing versus outsourcing. And is it something that we should look at before?
Well, the public administrator is paid through different sources, like they're not, so when somebody passes away and they don't have any relatives, the public administrator goes in and cleans up their stuff, and so they're paid through those services. So it's not, the city's not paying. Does that make sense? So if we outsource it to Douglas, they would just keep their fees from whatever services they provide, where Audrey keeps her fees for whatever services she provides. So it's not really a benefit or I don't know if there's a risk to the city, is what I'm
Okay.
thinking in my head. Either way, unless we have to hire a person, then that, of course, if we have to hire a person to help the current clerk recorder, then that would be a, extra FTE for the city.
That may or may not be recouped through those fees.
Right, that probably won't be recouped for those fees. We'd have to
Exactly.
have an agreement with
Yep.
the clerk recorder.
Exactly.
Right.
That's kind of why that one caught my attention. It's looking at staffing or
Yeah, well,
outsourcing.
and in talking to the clerk recorder, 90% of those cases are indigent. So there is no
there's not a
recoup
lot
of money.
not a lot of fees coming in to pay.
Right.
Just looking at the audit summary, we did a capital projects process review in May of 2018. Was the last time we looked at that. Cash handling was the one that I remember going back to 20. It's been almost 3 years now. Well, coming up on 3 years. We had 20 findings in that area that year. That may be one that's worth some sort of review this year. I don't know how extensive it would need to be, but with the new system in place and just the exposures we had from the findings I remember, there were some things that might be worth taking a look at again.
Okay.
It's unbelievable.
Rotating the different divisions that we had talked about in the past. Sherry, we had discussed that to move it out either 23, 24 with regards to rotating those different departments that we looked at to other ones.
For specific to cash handling?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
so I
we
don't,
had, when we, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't know if Chairperson Ferguson is asking for a just like validation that they're still keeping up with what they said they were going to do in those findings, or if you're talking about doing another full-blown audit of the cash handling procedures.
I'd like to pull up the audit findings and kind of go through. I don't remember specifically. I remember there were some things that were, fairly concerning, but I think it would be worth, one that's worthy of discussion as far as is it something that we want to take a look at this next audit fiscal year?
23.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
the cash
again, this
handling
is just, I'm
report
just teeing this up because we can obviously,
was
finish
one
up
of
the discussion
those-
with the next meeting.
Yeah, I know the cash handling was one of those reports that was obfuscated because, of course, this is a public meeting and we don't want to give, the criminals a roadmap to how to rob us. So, so it was one of those reports that was a little bit vague, but it was, there were things in there that needed to be fixed and that were fixed immediately. We did add cameras to a lot of the places that grab cash. That was another big portion of that. And I know we've got cash handling training going on and audits, unexpected audits and then the like.
Okay.
Um,
Good. Maybe the risk isn't as, as
But yeah,
material
I
as I
think that
remember.
cash
but-
handling audit was kind of expensive because we have so many places that do accept cash. So it took a lot of time for the auditors to run around and make sure everybody was following the procedures. So I think it would be expensive to do another full-blown audit, but this is the pleasure of the board, so whatever you want to.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go back and look at the findings from 2019, and I think it'd be worthwhile to maybe pick a couple areas that we want to spend some money on just following up. The other question I had too was, I don't know, I've been on this committee for like 5 or so years. The audit budget has never been increased, and I'm sure our average hourly rate is up. So it's like almost like we're getting less bang for our buck because we're on this 110 cap. So I don't know if that's, and I don't know how that all works, but it may be worthwhile looking at if Board of Supervisors thinks it's a good idea to maybe put a little more money in these audit plans.
Okay. I can tell you that it was based on a salary from a person who was an actual auditor that the city hired. And so that budget was based on her salary and benefits. However, with a firm, we get such a larger breadth of knowledge that, I think really this is the best way to go is to hire a firm. But obviously, the audit committee's been going since 2012, so even that salary of that person would be very outdated at this point in time. So I'll put in a supplemental to increase it this year, which is the way that we do our budgets, and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
What are you thinking of increasing? Or what would you?
I don't have a good feel for it. I just it just seems like there's some years where we kind of trim things that we don't have money to do.
Okay.
And, it's, to my knowledge, I don't know that it's ever increased, so it might be time
Okay.
to look at
Well,
some
I'll
sort of
see if we can
increase.
get 20,000. So it's 130,000 a year.
I think that'd be helpful, some
Okay.
of the things.
I will let you guys know too that I have actually put out a statement of qualifications for our internal auditor. It has been 4 years with Eide Bailey, and as wonderful as they are, we do like to just see what the market bears and keep them honest. So, so we did put out an SOQ, and so at the next meeting, I will be bringing the contract forward for recommendation for future years with our new internal auditor or with Eide Bailey again, depending on
Okay.
what we get.
When are the responses due on,
They're due, I believe it's about around March 15th.
okay, so pretty quick.
Yes.
Okay.
And so usually I recruit somebody from the city manager's office, myself and my deputy Pam, and we read them, look at their qualifications, look at their bid and what they're willing to do for that amount of money, and then we select a audit firm. And then, of course, we bring those to you,
Okay,
make sure you agree with our assessment.
good to know. Thank you.
And Sherry, it is due that, it's not due as quick as March 15th, March 28th.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I knew it was sometime in March.
It's coming fast.
Yeah.
All right, Member Wells, did we answer all your questions of the comments that you had related to risk? I think you also had cybersecurity, facilities condition assessment. I think we talked about everything else. Was there anything that we needed?
Yeah, the cybersecurity
close out on
response
that?
plan is due in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
The facility condition assessment and management plans for replacements 2024.
So those facility assessments are all done by outside consultants.
Yeah,
And they're doing that
Mhm.
trend analysis and looking at what other cities are doing and making sure we're not, jumping the gun and buying a building before it's
Yeah.
really necessary.
And preventative maintenance that goes into that,
Yeah.
making sure those
Yep.
buildings stay with the roof, staying standing and a non-leaky roof and all the components that they really do an age analysis to assess the condition based on age, and they can tell you overall that external consulting engagement comes back with a lot of great insights and information. And after that assessment is typically when internal audit can get in there and help as well identify how to implement management if they've course corrected to implement strategies to get back to a city's typical policy of an aged facility. So I don't know if you guys have gone through that analysis of identifying the facility condition index at which you want your facilities to be within 20 or 30, that would come into place as well.
We did actually do
Those are fun
that in, I
engagements.
believe, fiscal year 20 or 21. We did do a facilities needs assessment, and it came up with, of course, a huge deferred maintenance
Mhm.
number that we're working on funding. And this would be an update to that assessment, basically.
Yeah, the 6 years I've been, I don't remember ever doing an audit in that area on the facilities.
Happy to bring you back some ideas.
I appreciate it.
All right, are there any other comments? I think I think Audrey and myself have a good direction to go. Unless there's any other risks you guys can think of that you'd like to see audited in 2023.
Yeah, I think we've hit them. Let's table it for the next meeting, follow-up discussion, and kind of nail us down.
Okay. We'll put together a final budget for you to look at, and yeah, okay.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your help and direction.
Let's see.
Sorry, that was me.
That was item 6C, so that concludes the meat of the meeting. The next item is discussion around the next audit committee meeting date.
I usually ask the auditor what works best for her because she's got two large audits to finalize. So I'm actually going to be out of town the third week in June, so I'm hoping we can do it June 14th or June 28th.
Either one of those work on my schedule and my team's schedule.
Okay.
Did you say which week in June are you gone?
The third week.
And Audrey, is the week of the 6th open? I'm actually the
June 7th.
June
Mhm.
7th would be better for me. Do you guys have any restrictions at this point? No?
The 7th or 14th would be better for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we do the 7th? Does that work?
Audrey?
It works on my end, yes.
Okay, great.
June 7th, 1:30?
June 7th, 1:30.
Sounds good.
Same time, same place.
June 7th, 1:30. And with that, the meeting is concluded. Well, actually, we got a public comment. Is there anyone that joined us online or on the phone?
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Okay, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks for everybody's input. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.